I'm Carter Chang, the Impact Officer of London 2. It's really my honor to work closely with Samira here from London 3, the Chief Architect and Technical Engineer of our London Cross Hub recruitment last year. Today's structure will walk you through many crucial things. First, our approach to hub recruitment, and along the way, we will help you navigate frameworks, admin steps, and templates. We wrap up with some practical tips and a Q&A session. And then we will be sharing a Google Drive link where you can access our working templates at the end of the session. We have 3 global shaper hubs in London. London 1 is a well-established hub running for years. London 2 and 3 were 2 infant hubs established in 2022. Last year, we co-piloted the first cross-hub recruitment drive in the UK, for which we held 2 outreach events, 1 in person, 1 virtual, screened 200 applications, interviewed 60 candidates, and onboarded 30 new shapers of all hubs in total. As you can see, it is a rather elaborate process involving at least 3 stages with loads of tiny steps in between. So the whole point of today's training session is to walk you through why certain steps need to be there, how to implement them, so you can avoid the mistakes we almost made. But for everything, we must ask one crucial question. So why recruitment matters, or why should we bother?
Yeah, so just like many reasons. One is the need, but I see more importantly just like to keep like the hub's blood pumping. It's just always good to have refreshing souls. If you just like the same team for 3 years, that's going to be a repetitive experience. But if you have more people, more learnings, more engagement, would always be good for an entity.
Completely. The simple answer is to run your hub well, you first will need to recruit well. Natalie, Maisy, and Yemi, also Jannick, were all new shapers we recruited in last year's recruitment drive. 3 months in, Natalie already stepped up as London 2's next Vice-Curator, and then Maisy stepped up as London 3's Impact Officer. And Yemi right now is leading a climate project supported by Clifford Chance. Jannick is building an evergreen platform to pair aspiring entrepreneurs with subject matter experts within the London Shapers community. So yeah, a good recruitment program can bring you profound results. So the first thing would then be about outreach and application stage. A few things you need to think through at this stage, which include expression of interest, outreach events, online application form, and your grading structure. Regarding expression of interest, because it's a highly relatable thing that we have our Wealth official page, and there's a join us link at the bottom of your page where interested applicants can submit a CV and then leave a message flowing straight to your hub's email. That could be a good starting point. Where you can actually compile a list of people who are genuinely interested in joining. But given how simplified the form is, you also probably don't want that to be your core application form. And then the next outreach activities would then depend on your hub's bandwidth as to how many and also what kind of format your outreach would be. Could be info sessions and then the recruitment socials. But if you want to take things to the next level, one interesting idea that is to run a project ideation workshop. So not only you will help the candidates to develop better applications, you will also identify candidates who have great potentials and a genuine interest to run hub projects. The next thing would then be the application form. 4 key things. The first thing, you need to establish a system to eliminate non-eligible applicants. One practical tip is that really try not to assume that everyone read the eligibility carefully. You really don't want to screen, interview, and select some really good candidates with so much effort, but at the end realize that they actually aged out or will spend 90% of the time outside of a city. So really try to put that in place. And then secondly would be about screening questions, which we will go over that in detail in a minute. And then thirdly is supporting materials. So the basics are CV, LinkedIn, but I'll say allowing optional spaces for art portfolios, video links, personal website would be equally crucial. For shapers, after all, is about diversity. You don't want a system which skew too heavily towards bankers, management consultants, or any line of work where people are professional CV writers. And finally is about the DEI questions, which is a little bit sensitive area. Legally, The safest way is to set DEI questions optional or prefer not to say option in every DEI question. Practically, I would say using government recommended DEI question format would be a good idea. What we did was basically relying on the UK Home Office recommended format. This method should keep your design legally safe and politically correct, at least at the very bottom line. Also, save a little bit of energy in setting those categories and the structure of it. And also, it would be really important to highlight that the DI data is a screen-in factor just to help your hub to understand applicants' personal struggle better instead of eliminating anyone due to social, economical, cultural background. And then for screening question, we focus primarily on potential motivations and genuine interest instead of experiences. So we adopted this kind of unique approach because we have seen shapers with stellar track record, but then at the end, they actually did not have the fuel in the tanks to contribute further to the hub. So that would be not an ideal situation. We founded the system to create a level playing field and to identify candidates who have genuine intention and best potentials to contribute to hub projects. This revolves around 10 desirable qualities, which is basically the core backdrop framework that our applications is grounded on. Grouped it into 3 areas, included core motivation qualities, and then value alignment, and finally desirable technical skills. Based on these qualities, we have 6 questions. Each candidate will have ample opportunities, basically through these 6 questions, to demonstrate they have the drive and capacity for the mentioned 10 qualities. And the first one, why do you want to become a shaper? So this is more like a basic nitty-gritty question. So you want to screen out who actually have done their research well, and then that would be a big sign as to who are genuinely interested and willing to contribute. The second question we have was about what does diversity mean to you? So this is a value alignment question. So also a gatekeeping one. So not like you need every new shaper to be frontline human rights fighters, because itself that is not diversity, but you need this bottom line that every new shaper has respect for diversity. So this is a gatekeeping one. And then the third one, tell a time when things did not go as planned. And the fourth one, tell us a time you demonstrated leadership and what has changed. So these are capacity question expecting STAR approach, situation, task, action, and results. So you can remind your candidates to use the STAR approach. And then there are also number 5, scenario question assessing how applicants juggle between work, study, and hub activities. People will still be juggling, but why we put this in place is because you want to find people who at least have a plan and the best potential to survive those kind of challenges. And finally, what causes you're most passionate about? And this is actually a rather interesting one. Obviously, you want to screen out who are genuinely passionate about contributing, but strategically, this is also a kind of fortune-telling question, telling you probably which existing hub project or what new project this candidate will bring to their hub. It can be like your hub already had loads of climate projects and you want to diversify, so you want to recruit someone who is not a climate, or you can run a lot of climate projects, but you still need a lot more expertise in this area, so you want to get more of these people. Samira will cover that in detail on how to choose. The next thing would then be the grading structure. So we designed a system, so each hub will have an equal say in each application received. So what it means is each hub will send one reviewer to look at each app, and each application will be read by 3 reviewers and get an average score. I know that most of you are actually recruiting for your hub only. In that case, I would still encourage you to impose this average score structure, because you don't want to just one reviewer to determine the life of death of one certain app. So in that case, you can actually have this kind of check and balance regarding the evaluation of each app. So the grading structure, as you can see, involves 3 major parts. First, the reviewer will make sure that the applicants meet the basic requirements. Second, the numerical scoring. The reviewer will rate the applicant's performance for the 10 desirable qualities on a scale of 10. And finally, that would be a flexible, open-ended space where the reviewer can highlight noteworthy factors like diversity reasons, exceptional strength, which cannot exactly be captured by numerical scoring. After all, I have to highlight that for this process, it's really about your hub, and this is your call to determine what kind of screening questions and what kind of grading structure that can serve your hub best. Just feel free to accommodate our design and tailor it into your own. I'll pass the floor to Samira.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Samira. I'm going to talk a bit about the technical aspect of it. I'll try to go into as much detail as possible. So obviously, this was a very big spreadsheet that we worked with, so I'll try to explain it as much as possible. But if anybody wants any help afterwards, you can always reach out to me. But if we go to the next stage or to the next slide, once you've done your outreach, and Carter has talked a bit about kind of what it is that you need to do when it comes to the application, you'll need to actually go through the process of reviewing. So I'll talk a little bit more about the how process that we did. But we had 2 rounds, the application and the interview. So I'll start by talking about the technical and kind of project management tasks of reviewing the application first. And we can go to the next slide, because step 1 for us when it came to reviewing the applications was a conflict of interest scan. So the short of it, this was essentially so that we knew who in the hub had previous relationships with any of the applicants. For us, this was a very manual process that we had to go through. If you have a bit of budget within your hub, or if somebody works somewhere super fancy, you might be able to use a recruitment tool to make this a lot easier. But we didn't have the budget for that, even though we're in London. So we did a manual process. But this was, like I said, essentially just to get an idea of who people had previous relationships with. And if we can go to the next slide. Like I said, this was quite manual, but basically what we did is we just had a spreadsheet that had all of the potential applicants. We included very minimal information. We just included the name, their email, I think, and where they worked. And then the people in the hub that were doing that were reviewing the applications would just go in and point out who they had previous relationships with. The important thing here, a learning from our side and something I would recommend, is that you define what a conflict of interest means for your hub. So for us, for example, because we had those events previously that Carter mentioned, we needed to understand, well, if you met somebody at one of those events, does that constitute a conflict of interest? Because maybe during that event, even though you only met them once, you might have had a really great connection with them. You maybe had really good conversations. So you might want to draw a line there. And you might want to say, for example, well, you work together or you work at the same company, and there might be a bias there once you're reviewing. So make sure that you put conflict of interest for anybody that works in the same place as you, for example. And then we can go to the next slide. So once you've done that, you then need to allocate the assessors. Again, this was a manual process for us. If you have a recruitment tool, it'll be easier. But what we did was we used the conflict of interest to basically decide who wouldn't review a specific application. So like I said, it can get very technical because we use a spreadsheet. So this slide kind of explains how you can use that spreadsheet to randomize the assessors. Depending on how many applications you have and depending on how many assessors you have, it might not take super long. But what we did was we just did a randomizer, and then I just manually went in and edited wherever somebody was a conflict of interest. I just changed them for someone else and made sure that nobody was reviewing too many people. And then we can go to next slide. And this is step 2. So Carter has already talked a bit about kind of what it is you're assessing based on. But when it comes to this part, what we did, so there's a couple different ways that you can do this, but the way that we did this was that we allocated each assessor between maybe 5 to 20 applications. Again, depends on how many applications you have. I think we had about 200, maybe a bit over 200. So each person had to read quite a few applications. But say each person is reading 10 applications, you can then send them away to do it on their own over a week. So we gave everybody a deadline and said, you have until the end of this week to go through all of your applications. Some people might do 1 or 2 a day. Some people might sit down on the last day of the week and do all of them. Really, it doesn't matter how they do it. They have the deadline and they need to just make sure that they do it by then. But if you're sending people away to do it on their own, you have to make sure that you provide them with the right information so that they know they have all the information that they need. So we gave everybody a deck of slides, kind of like this, which basically explained how they should read the application, how they should analyze, what they should consider, all of those things. For this answer, this is what you should be looking for, all that kind of stuff. So then what we did as well to make this process a little bit easier was that we created a Google form where the assessors could then submit all of their analysis. So again, they could do it on their own and they would just submit it. They would add their name so that we could check that they had done it, the name of the applicant so that we knew which applicant it was, and then their scores and any of that additional comments and information. And again, here you might want to add a bit more structure to your hub. You might want to say you have to add additional comments for every single applicant just so that it's fair, or you might say let's not do that. But yeah, just make sure that you give them all of the information that they need to go away and do it on their own. If you don't have a lot of applications, you can't just get everybody together one afternoon and everybody just do the applications at the same time. Next slide. So once that week has passed and everybody has reviewed their applications, the next thing you need to do is step 3. You need to move people from application to interview. Who is actually getting an interview? And again, here, there's a couple different ways that you can do it, but the way that we did it was through a leaderboard. Because everybody had a number, basically, we were basically able to just use spreadsheet to create a leaderboard of kind of the top, all of the people. So yeah, like I said, because we were 3 hubs, so each application was reviewed by one person from each hub, which meant there was 3 assessors for one application. Most of you are not doing it that way. You're just doing one hub, but I would still recommend that you have at least 2 people read each application. This is a good way to kind of go around biases, to make sure that, you know, one person isn't deciding the fate of somebody else, so that you can kind of, so that you have a bit more flexibility. And also this way we were able to use the average. So if somebody gave somebody a 5 and somebody else gave them a 10, it pushed them up to maybe like a 7, for example. So you're able to work that out a bit. But then you also need to decide how many people you're moving to the interview stage. What we did was that we just counted backwards. So between 3 hubs, I think we needed to bring on about 10 people each, which is about 30 people that we needed to accept at the end. To give us a good amount of people to decide from at the end, we said, if we need to accept 30 people, let's interview 60 people then, because then about 50% will make it to the next round. So then we basically just did top 50 moves on to the next round. You can do it a different way. This was the way that worked for us and a way that kind of made sense. Then we can move to the next slide. And this is when we get to the interviews. So you've chosen your top 60, 50, top 10, or whatever it is that are going to do the interviews. And we're going to talk a bit through that. Before we get into that, just a quick tip. When you're moving to this stage, to the interview, what I would recommend you do is send the email to the people that have been accepted first, and then send an email to the ones that were rejected. That way, if out of the people that you accepted, if any of them are like, actually, I'm not interested anymore, you can still get some of the people that you were originally going to reject and include them, instead of sending the rejection and then going back to like 5 or 10 people like, hey, so sorry, would you actually still like an interview, which isn't a fun experience. But Carter is going to talk a bit more about the interview itself and how to structure that. But actually planning the interviews can be a little bit tricky. So this is how we manage it through kind of 5 steps. So the first thing we did was decide on a timeline. And what we did was that we blocked 2 weekends. This was maybe a couple of months into the future, but we said, all right, these are the 2 weekends, we're going to do it. We then went to the assessors, so the people from the hub that were going to interview, and basically had an availability form and said, when are you available? Which blocks are you available? From that, we were able to create an interview schedule. We also needed to make sure we had one person from each hub in the interviews, but it might be a little bit easier for you. You can just make sure you have 2 or 3 people in that interview. And then we sent the calendar invites to the assessors. And then we went out to the candidates that were interviewing and told them, these are the slots, pick your slot. They picked them. We allocated them to that slot and sent them their calendar invites. So pretty quick and easy. And when we were doing the interview, we then again made sure that the interviewers had the information that they needed. So we used that same method. We created a deck of slides that showed them all of the questions that they had to ask, potential follow-up questions as well, especially if they were interviewing somebody who didn't have as much experience. This is something that you can ask to get a little bit more out of them. These are the answers that you're looking for, all of that kind of stuff. So we just had all of that information in there, and you'll have access to these decks and these materials that we shared as well. And then again, we used the form that the interviewers could just submit as well right after the interviews. And then for the next slide, these are a couple of kind of tech and practical tips. So again, it'll depend on your culture, your hub culture, the culture in your city, if you're doing it online or in person, but we did it online because we were interviewing so many people and it just made a lot more sense. If you're doing it online, what you can do is you can create a Zoom call like this, and then you can create breakout rooms. So we knew that for every hour, pretty much, we were having 5 interviews going. So we just had 5 breakout rooms. When the candidates joined, I would just send them to their respective breakout rooms. Another thing as well, if you're doing it online, is make sure that you have tech support. So on the days of the interviews, I was tech support. My only job was to manage the Zoom and make sure everybody went into their rooms. I did maybe 1 or 2 interviews, but that wasn't my job. And also make sure you name the breakout rooms. That helps a lot. In terms of operational tips, make sure you tell the assessors to join at least 10 minutes before. As a matter of fact, lie to them. Don't tell them the interview starts at 5. Tell them the interview starts at 4:45 or something, just to make sure. The only thing worse than a candidate being late is an interviewer being late. So yeah, make sure that you do that. It also helps the tech support, because another thing we had to make sure was I had to make a decision on the day to have kind of a minimum assessors joined number. So because we had 3 interviewers, sometimes on the day, only 2 interviewers had joined, or only 1 interviewer, and the candidate is in the waiting room about to join, and I'm freaking out. What is going on? But I basically decided, because it's 3 interviewers, if 2 people have joined, that's fine. The interview will start as normal. If 1 person has joined, I might jump in, for example. But you'll kind of need to make those decisions. But yeah, just generally, the tech support person is going to have to make some executive decisions. So sending people into rooms, kind of saying, okay, you're going to have to go to this room instead. The tech support is going to have to be on top of that, which is why they also shouldn't be doing interviews. And then just lastly, I'd recommend that you have a group chat with all of the interviewers, just in case anything goes wrong, in case anybody needs help. It just makes it a lot easier to quickly communicate that way. Yeah, we can go to the next slide, which I think is back to you, Carter.
Thank you so much, Samira, for the technical aspect. It's really your expertise in that. It's me again for the soft aspect. So for interview format, what we did was a 35-minute interview for each final round candidates. So 5-minute ice-breaking, 25-minute core interview questions. Half of that 25 minutes was then spent on motivational questions, and then another half spent on competency-based questions, and finally 5-minute Q&A. Interview panels can go with the flow of the conversation. It was a friendly chat. We weren't hiring for NASA or MI6, so it's pretty conversational, but at the same time, for the fairness of all interviews, you will probably also don't want them to drift too far away from a basic standardized structure. So for the motivational and competency question, we basically develop a list of questions for each question group. So the interview panel can choose questions under each group according to the flow. Regarding the groups, Group A, it's motivational questions. So we basically ask, tell me about yourself, which impact areas you're most excited about, and what do you plan to contribute? And then for competency, that one is a little bit complicated. that we divided it into two groups. So group B1, which are leadership, teamwork, communication skills, sense of responsibility. And then B2 are communication skills, problem solving, and sense of responsibility. The interview panel can basically ask at least one question from each group and ensuring certain level of standardization of the interviews. Each candidate will have the opportunity to showcase desirable qualities that we mentioned earlier, which are the criteria that we sent to them when we were inviting them to the interviews. After the interview panel will have 5 to 10 minutes to discuss and agree on the scoring and fill out a post-interview evaluation form. So basically covering the scoring and written comments for the candidate. This one is actually a little bit simpler than the written application screening. The interview panel will give scores out of 10 for Group A motivational question, Group B1 competency, and B2 competency again. And there will also be a very interesting question, the diamond in the rough question, which allows the interviewers to flag candidates who are inexperienced but with great potentials. As mentioned earlier, we're actually looking for people with the best potential and capacity instead of a stellar track record. And this is a system for us to do that, and also to highlight those kind of noteworthy factors which are not captured in numerical scoring. So the recruitment manager will then process the collected scores and then also the comments, and then rank the candidates, highlight noteworthy factors, and then present the ranking to the curatorship team. In our case, it was like 3 curatorship team involved in this process. That's the soft aspects of the interview process. I will pass on back to Samir again to walk you through how to make the final selection work.
Yes. So I'll start by saying it's not too different from going from applications to interview. It's not that different than going interview to final selection, but there are a couple of differences which I'll talk about. So as Carter mentioned, the diamonds in the rough aspect was a pretty much key part of our recruitment strategy. And I would say, if anything, is maybe like the most unique thing that we did beyond all of like the technical aspects and everything else. And I'll talk through how we incorporated that. So the main thing you're going to do here is, again, create a leaderboard. So the way that you did it before is, okay, we need 6 people. It's going to be the same thing here. So look at your hub capacity, how many people you need to onboard, and create a leaderboard from that. So the example here is based on if you're a couple of different hubs, but I'm going to talk through if you're just one hub that needs to admit 10 potential shapers. So you have your top 10 leaderboard. Again, based on the average of all of the assessors, you have that final leaderboard. So you look at the top 10 and you say, okay, great, that's the top 10. What we then did was all of the diamonds that weren't in that top 10. So somebody could have been number 20, for example, but the assessor had said, this is a diamond, for example. So you have your top 10, and then all of the diamonds that fall under the top 10, you put them at the bottom of the list. So if there's 5 diamonds that aren't in the top 10, your top 10 becomes the top 15 now. What we then did was, because we were 3 hubs, out of that top 15, we then sent that to the different curatorship teams without the numbers. So we just said, these are the people that have been admitted. These are their applications. You make your own leaderboard now. Out of those top 15, your curatorship team goes away and decides who they want to keep. So the curatorship teams of each hub rank their leaderboard individually, just based on their needs, their priorities. From that, we then had a cross-hub curatorship team meeting where we decided the final allocation. So if somebody had, if one hub had put somebody at number 1 and another hub had put somebody at number 3, the hub that put them at number 1 got that hub, and they had to take somebody else from their leaderboard, for example. If you're just one hub that is doing this process might not make as much sense, but step 1 and 2 still make sense. So create your top leaderboard, and then add your diamonds to it. And I would say you can then still send it to your a curatorship team and say, these are the 15 people that have been admitted. pick your favorite 10, for example. And again, you don't need to tell them who's a diamond, who's top number 1 or top number 3, because at this stage, it really doesn't matter. They're all top 10. Once they're admitted to the hub, top 1 isn't going to immediately become curator, for example. So it doesn't matter as much. And this is also, I would say, if you're a curator or if you're running this, decide when, where, and how the curatorship team is involved. They don't have to be involved for every single step of the recruitment process. If you have a recruitment team, you can say, you can do some of the interviews, but for the most part, the recruitment team is going to take care of this. You come for this final decision. But yeah, that's a decision you need to make at some point. And we can move to the last slide. Again, if you're doing a cross-hub recruitment, what happened for us was that each hub then sent their individual acceptances out. We didn't really run into a problem where somebody said, actually, I wanted to be part of hub 3 and I've now been accepted to hub 1. For us, it didn't really matter. For you, it's definitely not going to matter because you're just sending it from one hub. So just send out your acceptance emails. Same thing here. If a successful candidate withdraws, if you haven't sent your rejection, you can then still pick somebody else from that top 15 or top 20. For us, we could do that, but we just needed to tell the other hubs as well. And then send out the rejection emails once you receive the confirmation from the successful candidate. Something that happened, and also be considerate and efficient. Don't take too long to inform unsuccessful candidates, especially if maybe you don't know, but they could be applying with a friend who got accepted, and the friend's like, I got accepted, I got an email, and they're like, it's been a week, I haven't heard anything back. So something you can do as well, and something that we did because our timelines ended up taking so long, was that we sent the rejection and the acceptance emails at the same time. But in the rejection email, we said, we were still very happy with your interview. This is purely, capacity. We'll reach out if something opens up. So you kind of give yourself a little bit of opportunity to reach out again if anybody withdraws. We can go to the next slide. So yeah, general top tips, especially when it comes to the kind of tech side of things and the project management side. These are partially things that work well for us and we think you should do, but also things that we didn't do and we think you should definitely do. So the first thing is, and I'm not going to say which is which, but the first thing is make sure you set a clear timeline. Make sure you know when you want to have the interviews. You can even add it in the application process, say interviews are going to be at this point, for example. But even just for your team, it's so important everybody knows when things are happening. And also make sure you give yourself at least 1 week buffer. Things will come up. Somebody might take a little bit too long to get their part done. So make sure you give yourself some time for that. Then make sure that you set out very clear tasks from the start. When we did this, obviously this was the first time that we did a cross-hub collaboration to this extent. So we didn't really know what tasks were going to be needed. We would be in a WhatsApp group like, hey, doesn't somebody need to do this? And somebody would go, all right, I'll do it. But you're getting all of our materials, so this shouldn't be a problem for you. And you've probably done recruitment in the past. So make sure you know what needs to happen, when it needs to happen. And the third point, know who needs to do it. So make sure you set up very specific ownership areas. For me, for example, my main thing was tech. When it came to the Zoom, that was my responsibility. When it came to the spreadsheet, that was my responsibility. Other people might do things as well, but I knew that I had the main oversight. Andreas, for example, handled the emails. That was his job. He needs to make sure the emails go out on time. If we're taking too long, he pushes us and says, we need to send this email right now, finish writing it, all of that kind of stuff. If you're doing a cross-hub collaboration, or if you're a very big hub, make sure there's no more than 4 main people in the recruitment team. Everybody can join the first meeting, but make sure that you work lean and agile. We did it across 3 hubs. So that's 2 curators per hub, curators and vice curators. That's maybe 2 or 3 people from the recruitment team. It was another 2 people from comms. So at best, every meeting we had, or almost every meeting we had 15 people in it. As I'm sure you can imagine, no decision can be made with 15 people in a meeting room, especially if it's online. So make sure you set out representatives from each hub, max 2 people. They become the primary contacts. They become the liaisons between the different hubs. If a decision is made in the meeting, discuss your deal breakers or non-negotiables if you're working cross-hub within the team, and then let the representatives bring that forward. But yeah, smaller teams actually works a little bit better. Then the next slide is a couple more tips as well, especially if you're doing this cross hub. So if you're doing this across different hubs, once you make that decision that you're going to do a recruitment strategy together, you now have to adopt the mentality that you are working as one hub. From the moment that you decide that you're going to do this together, you're one team. Even when you're allocating new members to each hub, you're one team. You kind of need to make sure you keep that, keep the relationships going. I'm going to mention this twice because it's important. Make sure you have a timeline, discuss it, decide when things need to be done. And you can also share this with the rest of the hubs so that they know what's going on. And like I mentioned earlier, unless the curatorship team is managing actual recruitment tasks, they don't need to be brought into the process until a later stage when decisions are being made, because you need to be working very quickly here. And yeah, assign a mediator from each hub, especially if you're doing cross-hub collaboration. So these people, if you have a mediator, the mediator should be someone who isn't doing applications, they're not doing interviews, so they can remain a bit unbiased and kind of say, actually, this person didn't have a very good application. Like, why are we still on this? And they can kind of rise above it a little bit. And the next slide. Yes, so as Carter has mentioned in the chat, and I think she mentioned in the beginning, we'll be sharing all of this information or all of the application tools and all of the stuff that we use. So here are just a couple of kind of technical tips to keep in mind. I'll read through some of it, but really read through this at your own time. Like I said, feel free to reach out if you need any help. If you're using Google Forms, you can connect forms to the application manager. You can have several forms going into one spreadsheet. The application manager that you're going to get, it includes the tabs that you'll need to manage applications, but you can also add in, timelines, the list of the assessors, all that kind of stuff. As you're going, feel free to hide sheets. And yeah, a big thing, as somebody who uses spreadsheets a lot, when you're giving access to other people in the hub, make sure that you give them view-only access. It's a very big spreadsheet. It has a lot of tabs. It has formulas. It has a lot of lots of things going on with it. The last thing you want is somebody to accidentally delete something, accidentally move something, and it messes everything up. If that happens, like I said, you can reach out to me. I will sound very happy on WhatsApp, but I will be a little bit annoyed that somebody moves things around. But yes, make sure that you look at who actually has access to it. And yeah, there are a couple more tips there as well. And we can move to the next, which, yeah, Carter, I'll let you take this.
Yeah, thank you so much, Samira, for the life-saving tips. They're really, really crucial and basically truly distilled from the painful experience that we have along this journey. And hopefully that would be a little bit of help to you guys. So finally is about the resources sharing. After this training session, we'll be sharing a full set of templates and working files and also the slide of this. This is the Google Drive link. Need not copy and paste or screenshot it. I'll share it in a follow-up email after this session, so don't worry about it. And then there are a couple of rules. First of all, you will be navigating the templates and also the working files with fewer access. So just please download and copy the files to your own Google Drive and work out your own tailored versions for your own help. Another note, which is really important, is that we actually intentionally shared the raw versions of the templates and working files that we have. And we left it there as a very original versions because this is some kind of reminder what kind of details you need to include for different kinds of document when you are navigating this recruitment process. So there will be like internal timelines, announcement, and also Zoom links. In that case, hopefully you'll find it as a good reminder for this whole process. Oh, and the last thing is that based on the previous sessions, we actually collected a couple of questions that were raised by other hubs. Some of you guys may find it very helpful as well. So this is the final part before we go to the Q&A, just in case anyone had this kind of question. So I'll just answer it right now. So the first question is that how to attract talents in the very first place, especially for infant hubs. So the first thing I would recommend would then be to make connections of really high influence focal points, which could be current shapers, and also within the target communities, such as the university in your own city or some kind of graduate networks. So for us in London, we have a couple of really high influence shapers, including our incoming curator, Reese, who is really active within the London School of Economics, and also Natalie, who is in this training as well, who would be our incoming Vice-Curator, who are active in different kinds of impact groups, not just within London, but also within the UK. For them, they would be able to share the LinkedIn posts or Instagram. The second thing, as mentioned, the LinkedIn and Instagram strategy. And the third thing would then be outreach events, which include product showcase and interactive workshops. A rather recent example, what the London Hub's doing right now for the upcoming application cycle, which will be open in August 2024. In the next week, next Sunday, we're actually running a product showcase. And we try to make it into a semi-outreach event. So we will have all the three hubs sharing their, presenting their projects, exchanging ideas, brainstorming, acceleration strategies, but at the same time have half of the spaces open to potential candidates, applicants to join. So they will be part of this discussion, but also have the opportunity to see what exactly is going on within the London hubs. So that would be one good example. And then the second question would then be how...
Sorry, Carter. Something just to quickly add here as well. So on the first point, connections with high influence focal points, something that was key for some of our hubs this last time around was the fact that we wanted to attract kind of more creative people. So something we did and something you should do as well, whether you're looking for specifically creatives or not, is reaching out to other community organizations, community groups, that kind of stuff, to ask them to share your application. And you can also reciprocate it and just say, yeah, when you guys are looking for people, we'll also share it. You can potentially do events or projects with them, so you can attack those areas specifically as well. And like Carter said, with the outreach events, this project showcase is happening this coming Sunday, but we probably won't start recruiting until August, and that's completely fine. You can do these kinds of outreach events throughout the year, build up your list of potential applicants. And similarly, you can use the fact that you can use your projects that maybe have big events to also start getting interest and getting people that attend the event that are like, oh, I actually might want to be part of this. I might want to be a shaper. So you can start getting some of that interest there as well. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, that would be really helpful as well. Yeah. So yeah, for the next question, that would be about how to downsize recruitment campaigns for smaller hubs, especially given a lot of you guys could be other hub are at rather infant stage. Yeah, actually for London hub, back then we were also like London hub 2 and 3 were actually at a infant stage as well. So hopefully our experience would be helpful to you guys as well. So the first thing would be about relying more on the existing templates and written guides. Well, back then we didn't have that, so we built that, and then now we're sharing that with you. In that case, perhaps less adaptation and also less individualization for each hub would kind of help you save a little bit of energy. And then second thing would then be the conflict of interest check and DEI question should still be there. It is mostly because this is about making things right and also the integrity of it, and also being politically correct, not being like open up yourself for potential issues, because like this is a very elaborate process. You don't want to raise concerns or challenges just because you want to skip certain steps, save your energy, but at the end invite more work or more crisis to deal with. So just put that in place and then make things right, and then that should get you far. And yeah, just try not to downsize those parts. That would be my recommendation. The third thing would then be to simplify the screening process. For example, like shorter application forms, which you can record in our 6 screening questions. Perhaps you focus more on the first 4 instead of looking into the final 2, which are the scenario questions, and also more reliance on the numerical scoring. But the downside is that it's really a trade-off that you could possibly miss those diamond in the rough candidates or people who may not score well numerically, but actually they have great potential. But just have that kind of balance in your consideration and decision making. And then with the finally thing would then be simplify the interview process. For example, relying on a smaller panel instead of a 3 people or 4 people one. Yeah, so hopefully these would help the infant hubs. Yeah, so that's pretty much of our presentation, and we'll now open the floor to any kind of questions. Anyone?
Feel free to unmute yourself or just drop it in the chat. But yeah, Ryan, I think I saw your hand go up. I don't know if it was for us, but yeah.
Yeah. I was looking for the raise hand button, but I couldn't find it.
No.
But yeah, thank you so much. This session has been amazing. This is great work, really. I'm really grateful for sharing the resources. I have one question that is, I would like to know more of an interest. Is there a specific framework for those who like passed, or let's say a specific framework for probation visual shapers? If there's any criteria or anything for them to become full-time shapers?
I think you cut off a little bit. Is it around
Sorry.
probation you were asking?
Yeah, like so this framework is good for recruitment, but after they are recruited, let's say 10 shapers we have, what's the criteria for them to pass the probation period? If there's a specific framework for them.
Yeah, I don't think we had, I think, so once we sent those acceptance emails, I know I said the whole 3 hubs, 1 hub mentality thing. Once we sent the acceptance emails, that's where we kind of went our separate ways. So each hub, I think, has kind of different probation periods. But I think from our experience, we were looking at primarily the hub meetings. So were people joining them? Were people engaging? And then not just that, but I think the way that we did the recruitment, it fell in line with roughly when we were then looking to kick off a new project. So we also used that as kind of to see if people were engaged, even if they were creating new projects or if they were really interested in engaging with projects that we already had going. Those are kind of the things that you can use to look at.
Yeah, echoing to Samir's response, I was actually responsible for the onboarding part of Hub 2 back then. Yeah, and echoing to Samir, it's very true that for even within the across the London Chamber Hubs, we actually have different kind of probation policy and also different kind of onboarding process. But speaking from my experience regarding Hub 2's onboarding, so basically what happened is that before they come to the first Hub meeting, we have basically a 2 hours training regarding all the rules that they have, basically an formal introduction for regarding the Global Shaper community, their wealth, and also their Hub's history. And then there is a project adulation process, basically an interactive workshop, helping them to start off their own project. And before that, there's actually one step that I asked them to submit their own project proposal. If they have any idea, they were really kind of like those kind of burning passion they want to kickstart within their hub. So they would submit it and then they would flow it to the interactive section in that onboarding training. And then straight after the onboarding, they would join their wider hub meeting. So the older shapers would come, they would share their own experience. And then that is like a combined session when they have gathered at the same place and then become one hub after inviting them. And another thing that I think is pretty helpful is that I actually align the project timeline with the recruitment timeline as well. So basically, we were onboarding the new shapers. We actually have a simultaneous open call to the older shapers for them to think about new projects. So it's basically aligning this everything to the shape year, which start in July, and then this all happened around like October, November. So you have like basically to have all the projects ongoing like for the rest of the shaper year. So that's pretty much the tips from London Hub 2, and yeah, I hope that helps.
I'm
That's
gonna jump
really
in
helpful.
here.
Yes. So Jenny,
Sorry. Sorry, I'm gonna jump in here because I have to jump off now for another meeting. I'm so sorry to leave you all, but you're in very capable hands with Carter. I have put my number in here. So, I mean, you can ask me and Carter about anything to do with this process, but if there's any kind of specific technical aspects or project management side of it, feel free to reach out on my number or on the Shapers social media channel on Top Link. That's the name. Feel free to reach out on Top Link as well. And I'm happy to do a call with you and your hub and talk through the whole process as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Samira. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Carter. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, all good. Thank you, Samira.
Bye.
Yeah, so I'll still be here. So I saw quite a lot of questions over there. Should I go with anyone who has a burning question want to shout out first when I'm reading the question there? Anyone? Just unmute yourself. Okay, I got a question from Kavya. So Kavya asks, our hub has a lot of hub transfers and sabbaticals when members are changing location for work and studies. Most of the time, their hub gets little time to fill in the gap. How could we better manage this? Can we actually retain such members? Honestly, for this one, this was an issue for London Hub as well. London itself is an international hub, an international city. People come and go, and then I think every year there are at least like almost, I wouldn't say 1/3, but out of the 30 hub members, there would be like around 8 of us either age out or transfer somewhere or go on sabbatical. This is why one of the backdrop is that right now we kind of have this kind of mentality that first of all, we have to run recruitment every year. And also another source of shaper that you may find relevant would then be accepting the transfers yourself, like from your own hub. But I understand that this may not apply to many other hubs because like for London, we actually have received a lot of application for transfer outside of our application because of London itself. But for other hubs, I think one way would then be honestly to run your recruitment at least annually, or perhaps like to scale down the recruitment process a bit and then perhaps like run it based on your own needs, because having the backdrop that you need at least 20 people for your hub to be able to be up and running. Yeah, I hope that helps. And also, internally, it would be about hub management, not just about recruitment, as in to have that kind of draw to your own hub, as in draw people in, motivate them. Yeah, back then what we have was a carrot and stick strategy, that if people are not showing up for too many times, we have to have a talk with them. The creatorship team would be having telephone calls and then like discussing what are the reasons. And if this goes on, we may have to have them step outside of the hub if this is ongoing for like 4 months. Yeah, or like extended probation. Yeah, that was the stick. And then for the carrot back then was that we actually have quite a lot of really exciting career acceleration opportunities, thanks to our curator, Fish, who were able to, for example, organize a meeting or a mentorship program with, for example, the former UAE climate minister. And then, yeah, we have those kind of roundtable discussions, and it was really exciting. as in those would be those kind of opportunities where only those kind of active shapers would be able to join. So that would be the carrot. Yeah. And yeah, I hope that helps. And also, yeah, if you have any questions, just shout out. Oh, I got a question from Anna. Anna asked, how many interview rounds do you recommend for an infant hub? Even for us, we only did 1 round. Yeah, because it's like immense workload. I would suggest just plan your one single interview round well instead of doing 2 rounds. Like the only reason that I think can justify 2 rounds is because you have follow-up questions to ask. But why you have follow-up questions to ask is because you didn't ask it in the first one, right? So you can make your own decision. So I think if you plan it well, you only need 1 round. Yeah, to save energy, to save time, and yeah, and save the stress as well. Yeah. And then any other questions, guys? Did I miss anyone in the chat that I haven't answered? Just shout it out. Anyone? Last call. Okay, all good. Yeah, so to wrap up, thank you so much, you guys, for your time. I understand that some of you guys are actually like really early in the morning or really late in the night based on the registration info that I received, and yeah, because it shows your time zone. And thank you so much again. And then as mentioned by Samira, we will be available even after this session. So I'll be sending a follow-up email to all of you guys regarding the Google Drive and also yeah, probably a recording. And then if you have any burning question or like question tailored for your own help you want to ask, just WhatsApp us. Yeah, we will be there to support you. Yep. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, guys. We'll see you around. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.